Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash this past weekend in the country's remote northwest, along with its foreign minister, local media confirmed on Monday. Eyes are on how this could impact the Middle East that's already mired in confrontation. The leaders of South Korea and the UK will co-host the AI Seoul Summit, a two-day event starting from Tuesday, where world leaders and business players in the sector aim to delve into innovation, safety, and inclusivity for the technology that's now almost ubiquitous. With the government doctors' conflict well into 3 months, the authorities are renewing their requests for trainee doctors to return to work by today so they can meet requirements for next year's specialist examinations. It's May 20th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin in the Middle East. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi has been confirmed dead in a helicopter crash in the country's remote northwest. Our Shin Se-byuk has the latest.
Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and Iran's foreign minister have been confirmed dead after the helicopter they were traveling in crashed on Sunday. That is according to Iran's Mehr news agency on Monday. Rescuers located the helicopter carrying the president and 8 others in the mountainous region of northwest Iran, where they found no sign of life. In the early hours of Monday, a Turkish drone identified a heat source suspected to be the wreckage of the helicopter. The detected heat source was located near the village of Tavil in Iran, approximately 30 kilometers from the Azerbaijani border. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps also confirmed that the heat source found by the Turkish drone could be the wreckage of the helicopter carrying President Raisi. President Raisi had been in Azerbaijan for the opening of a dam with the country's president Ilham Aliyev. Both the U.S. and the EU are watching developments surrounding the crash cautiously. U.S. President Joe Biden is said to have been briefed on the incident during his visit to the state of Georgia, with U.S. officials keeping close tabs on the story. European Council President Charles Michel also said he is watching for developments carefully, but did not elaborate further. Many countries with strained relations with Tehran have remained quiet on the matter. However, countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey have expressed support for Iran, saying they are ready to provide any help required for search operations. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Now, eyes are on what happens next in Iran with the sudden death of its president. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Yoon-ji explains.
Ibrahim Raisi, a hardliner and religiously conservative politician, was elected as Iran's president in 2021. The 63-year-old enforced brutal crackdowns on protests over repressive laws, such as the mandatory hijab rules. Mass protests went on for months in Iran starting in late 2022 over the death of a 22-year-old woman, Mahsa Amini, who had been detained over allegedly not wearing a hijab. In Iran, the president is the second highest ranking official after the supreme leader. Raisi was long seen as a potential successor to the current supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who holds ultimate power regarding domestic and foreign affairs in the country. Khamenei sought to reassure the public in a statement on Saturday, saying the Iranians should not worry.
Be sure that there will be no disruption to the work of the country.
Raisi's death comes at a sensitive time for Iran and amid growing tensions in the Middle East over Israel's war against Hamas. Last month, Iran launched an unprecedented drone and missile attack on Israel, marking its first ever direct attack on the country in response to an Israeli airstrike on Iran's consulate. With the sudden death of Raisi, an expert says a ferocious struggle for power may have begun.
Ibrahim Raisi was a very leading contender for the position of the supreme leader. Now, the big question in Iran is what happens when Ayatollah Khamenei, who is 95, passes away, who is going to be the next supreme leader. A key contender for that was or is Ibrahim Raisi. And so with him out of the way, that would be very significant.
Under the Iranian constitution, Vice President Mohammad Mober is expected to become the country's interim president. He will be part of a three-person council along with the Speaker of Parliament and the head of judiciary that will arrange a new presidential election within 50 days of the president's death. This means a new election is expected to be held by early July instead of in 2025. 배은지, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United Kingdom will co-host the AI Seoul Summit this week, beginning Tuesday. It's expected to set out a vision for governing the technology, expanding on the declaration made at the AI Safety Summit in England last year. Our Oh Soo-young tells us what to expect.
South Korea and Britain are working to reach a joint statement with world leaders on advancing innovation, safety and inclusivity in artificial intelligence in a virtual summit co-hosted by the two nations. In a briefing Monday, South Korea's top office said the AI Seoul Summit will kick off on Tuesday, with the leaders of G7 nations, Singapore and Australia invited to follow up on the first AI Safety Summit last November. While the Bletchley Park Summit focused on addressing threats to humanity posed by the fast-evolving technology, this whole session will expand the agenda to include innovation and inclusivity, with leaders expected to adopt an agreement on the way forward. Heads of international organizations, including the United Nations and the European Union, as well as global tech giants like Samsung, Naver, Google, Amazon and OpenAI have also been invited.
Participants will hold a balanced discussion on not only the risks posed by AI, but also its positive aspects and how AI can contribute to humanity.
In a joint op-ed on Monday, President Yoon and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak emphasized the need for global standards to regulate and mitigate risks posed by AI, to transform lives for the better and stop the global race to the bottom. They said the AI Seoul Summit is expected to set out a vision for multilateral governance of the technology to tackle global challenges such as poverty and climate change. President Yoon, beginning with his New York initiative in 2022, has actively promoted global efforts to form norms on advancing digital innovation for the benefit of humanity, whilst expanding access and rights to gain from technology. On the second day of the summit, a ministerial session and the AI Global Forum will take place offline to expand the conversation.
The AI Global Forum aims to advance discussions with various stakeholders, including governments, firms, experts and civil society, under the theme of governance for embracing AI safety innovation.
A presidential official told reporters China was not invited to join the leaders' meeting, in line with the first AI Safety Summit, but Beijing has agreed to participate in the ministerial session on Wednesday. Acknowledging the differences on governing technology, namely between liberal democracies and Beijing, the official said such issues are likely to be discussed throughout the summit. Yoon's office says by leading the comprehensive conversation on setting digital standards, South Korea hopes to expand its global reach as a technological leader and also become one of the world's top 3 powers in artificial intelligence. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
President Yoon held a phone call with Singapore's new Prime Minister Lawrence Wong on Monday and discussed ways to strengthen bilateral relations ahead of the 50th anniversary of opening diplomatic ties next year. Yoon congratulated Wong, who took office last week. Calling Singapore a key partner, President Yoon called for the bolstering of cooperation in the digital, AI, and infrastructure sectors. Wong thanked Yoon and talked of working together to further elevate bilateral relations in various fields, including politics, the economies, and culture. He also suggested stronger cooperation in AI ahead of the AI Seoul Summit. South Korea and Japan are expected to hold a defense ministerial meeting in Singapore later this month, during which the two sides are likely to touch upon the 2018 petrol aircraft dispute once again to prevent a recurrence. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung has more.
A Japanese national newspaper has hinted that South Korea and Japan will soon resume bilateral defense exchanges, which have been on hold since the 2018 patrol aircraft dispute. Yomiuri Shimbun on Monday reported that the defense ministers of the two sides are expected to meet on the sidelines of the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore at the end of the month, where they're expected to hold talks and exchange documents on preventing a recurrence. The dispute flared up in December 2018 when a Japanese maritime patrol aircraft flew at an unusually low altitude over a South Korean warship. Tokyo, on the other hand, accused the South Korean vessel of blocking its fire control radar. Talks have been suspended since 2019. South Korea's defense ministry confirmed that the two sides are currently in talks.
South Korea and Japan already confirmed their positions last year regarding this issue and decided to prepare measures to prevent a recurrence from a future-oriented perspective. We are closely cooperating with Japan.
Japan's media has acknowledged that the incident has been the biggest barrier between the defense authorities of Seoul and Tokyo and turned the spotlight on whether the resumption of defense exchanges will serve as an opportunity to rebuild trust between the two sides. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
In a press conference today, the country's Unification Minister revealed some changes to the organization of the North Korean Workers' Party in what appears to be Pyongyang's effort to deny the idea of reunification. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil has this report.
Unification Minister Kim Yong-ho revealed new findings on North Korea while reaffirming Seoul's policy against the regime in a press conference on Monday.
The North hasn't announced it yet, but its United Front Department has renamed the Workers' Party Central Committee Bureau 10, and its functions have been centralized on psychological warfare.
North Korea's United Front Department served as the counterpart to South Korea's Ministry of Unification. A senior ministry official said the change means Pyongyang is now only focusing on espionage against the South and not efforts related to reunification. Other experts said it was notable that the North had decided to keep the department intact, although under a different name. When asked about former President Moon Jae-in's recent memoir in which he wrote he trusted Kim Jong-un's sincerity, that he has no intention of using nuclear weapons, the minister responded as follows.
What's most important is to read our counterparts' intention and capability. North Korea has the capability to threaten us through its nuclear and missile development. If we only focus on its intention while overlooking its ability, this could lead to a misjudgment of the state.
He said one of the toughest challenges remaining was Pyongyang's refusal to engage in dialogue.
The inter-Korean communication channel should resume regardless of the political and military situation, at least for humanitarian purposes and disaster response measures. It's urgent to restore such channels ahead of the monsoon season.
The minister plans to visit Seonyu-do Beach this Friday along with U.S. Special Envoy Julie Turner, where 16-year-old Kim Young-nam was abducted by the North in 1978 to raise awareness of the issue. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
New Taiwan President William Lai Ching-te called on China to stop threatening the democratic island. Lai's remarks came on Monday as he was sworn in as the new president, pledging to uphold Taiwan's constitution in relations with China at his inauguration ceremony. He urged Beijing to accept Taiwan's existence, respect the choice of Taiwan, show sincerity, and replace military confrontation with dialogue. Lai also showed his willingness to have cooperative exchanges with China on equal terms, starting with the tourism and education sectors. With the government doctors' conflict well into 3 months, the authorities are renewing their request for trainee doctors to return to work by today so they can meet requirements for next year's specialist examinations. Yoon tells us more.
The ongoing medical dispute over the government's plan to increase South Korea's medical school quota is persisting, with the government urging trainee doctors who have been absent for 3 months to return to work on Monday to fulfill the training period requirements needed to qualify for next year's specialist certification examinations. At a Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters meeting on Monday, Health Minister Cho Kyu-hong said that while individual circumstances may vary, trainee doctors who left their positions starting from February 19th must return by today, which marked 3 months of absence. However, the government added that it will be flexible for those who have extended leave or sick leave. And as they continue their efforts to convince trainee doctors to return to hospitals, the government also expressed hope that medical students would return to school. Meanwhile, the 2025 university admission plan, which reflects the increased number of medical school admissions, is expected to be finalized by this Friday, May 24th. As details including the selection ratio for regional talent recruitment and the ratios of regular and early admissions have not yet been made public, the finalization of the admission plan will likely prompt students to begin preparing for their exams. The Korean Council for University Education will hold a University Admissions Committee meeting this week to review and approve the 2025 University Admission Plan amendments submitted by universities nationwide. According to a council representative on Sunday, the committee needs to approve the plan this week to enable universities to announce their admission guidelines by the end of this month. Regarding the enforcement of administrative measures such as license suspensions, a presidential office spokesperson said Sunday that each case will be looked at on an individual basis, with administrative measures against the medical professionals who have left their workplace to depend on their behavioral shifts since they began their protest. The official added that the government is currently evaluating the timing, severity, and approach of these measures. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
The top office has apologized for causing confusion by announcing a ban on overseas items that are not KC certified, a certification that proves items meet Korea's safety regulations. This came from President's Chief of Staff for Policy Song Tae-yoon on Monday, a day after the government officially scrapped the new policy just 3 days after it was announced due to backlash from the public that it limits the choice of consumption. Song added the President has instructed measures to prevent the recurrence of these types of situations by conducting stronger policy reviews and enhancing public consultations, among others. This month, we mark 2 years since the opening of the Blue House to the public as a venue of culture. And in light of this occasion, a host of events are being held in Seoul. Our An Song-jin was there.
Back to the people. South Korea's Blue House, also known as Cheongwade, is marking 2 years since it first opened its doors to the public on May 10, 2022. After President Yoon moved the presidential office to Yongsan-gu District, the previous office located in Jongno-gu District has been holding a range of events. As well as tours inside, a series of art, music, and media performances are taking place which will continue throughout the summer. Special exhibitions will be on display such as Handshakes for Freedom, which shows records of diplomatic efforts, and Children Drawing Hope, an exhibition of Ukrainian children's art. And there will be classical music, jazz, and K-pop concerts.
Among the various events that are taking place at the Blue House, this traditional performance festival offers a wide range of Korean folk music and dance performances.
Samulnori, traditional music with 4 percussion instruments, was performed on the stage. The showcase, a collaboration between 4 universities, uses the themes of joy, pleasure, sorrow, and anger to show the lives of people in the past. Another concert blends Korean folk music and jazz, and visitors could also enjoy a traditional Hauhae mask performance, which is a satire on the lives of people during the Joseon Dynasty. A culture expert said that such events can help bring the Blue House and the people closer.
Opening this area as a cultural complex space like this allows more communication with the people, but above all, how it's used is the most important. A historical museum that displays historical records of the Blue House can make it even more future-oriented.
The Culture Ministry and Blue House Foundation aim to brand the Blue House as a culture and art space that can be enjoyed by citizens, and such events will further help create that identity. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Need. Hello, Paul.
Hello there.
Let's first start with football. The English Premier League season concluded on Sunday, and Son Heung-min, he managed to make it double figures for assists.
Yes, that's right. It is double figures for assists and also for goals. He scored 17 goals this season. This is the 3rd time that Son has managed to hit double figures for both goals and assists. Also, he's only the 6th player in Premier League history to do that. His 10th assist of the season came on Sunday in Tottenham's 3-0 win over Sheffield United, teeing up Dejan Kulusevski in the 65th minute. Tottenham finished 5th in the league, meaning they'll play in the Europa League next season. Meanwhile, at the very top of the table, Manchester City sealed a record 4th Premier League title in a row. On the final day, City had to at least match Arsenal's result and did so, beating West Ham 3-1. Arsenal beat Everton 2-1.
And sticking with football, it was a busy weekend in Europe, with other leagues also having concluded this weekend.
Yes, including in France, where there was a goal and assist for Yi Gang-in. On Sunday, in Paris Saint-Germain's 2-0 away win over Metz, Yi Gang-in laid on an assist for Carlos Soler inside 7 minutes. Just 5 minutes later, and Lee doubled PSG's advantage with his 3rd league goal of the season. PSG ended the campaign 9 points clear at the top of the table as the French League champions and have the French Cup final coming up against Lyon next Saturday local time. In Germany, Bayer Leverkusen became the first German team to go a whole season unbeaten. The recently crowned League champions of Germany beat Augsburg 2-1 on the final day to make it 26 wins and 6 draws from 34 matches.
And moving on to baseball now, Lee Jong-ho's season is over.
I'm afraid so, yes. He's to undergo surgery on his shoulder. His club, the San Francisco Giants, announced on Friday that the surgery will go ahead in the next couple of weeks and that he won't return this year. According to Yonhap, Lee Jong-ho met with an orthopedic surgeon who recommended surgery to repair a torn labrum. In 37 games this season, he scored 2 home runs and 8 RBIs. Elsewhere in MLB, Kim Ha-sung on Sunday hit his 6th home run of the season, but first in 12 matches. It was also his first multi-hit match in 21. Batting 9th, Kim drew a walk to open the 2nd inning and then singled off starter Bryce Elder to lead off the 4th. His San Diego Padres beat the Atlanta Braves 9-1.
And finally, to athletics, a smile jumper has another reason to smile. What can you tell us about Woo Sang-hyuk?
Yes, a medal again for him, and one more that's silver as well. On Sunday in Tokyo, Woo Sang-hyuk finished 2nd at the Seiko Golden Grand Prix. He cleared 2 meters and 27. Yuval Reith of Australia won the competition, clearing 2 meters 30. Woo Sang-hyuk had 3 attempts at 2 meters 30, but fell short in the process. The Seiko Golden Grand Prix is a World Athletics Continental Tour Gold Meeting Series event, and Woo Sang-hyuk actually won the competition last year. His aim for the rest of the year is to beat his personal and Korean record of 2 meters 36. He'll have the chance to do so in the Paris Olympics coming up this summer.
Fingers crossed. All right, thanks for that, Paul. See you next time.
Thank you.
Today is what's called Soman, which marks the beginning of summer on the lunar calendar. Early summer heat continued in Chungcheongnam-do province, and in Daegu, temperatures rose to 30 degrees Celsius. However, in central and northern areas, including Seoul, light rain fell with cloudy weather. Tomorrow will be mostly sunny across the country, and it will be hot in the center parts of the country. In the middle of the day tomorrow, the UV rays will soar in the most parts of the country, except Gyeongsangbuk-do province, from high to very high. You might want to put on sunscreen to protect your skin. Tomorrow, Seoul and Busan will start off at 16 degrees. Highs will move up to 28 in Seoul, Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Gwangju. During the rest of the week, it will be as hot as early summer, and daily temperature differences will continue to be very large. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Children's laughter, hope, dream. K-animation belongs in them. Interesting and valuable story that transcends between everyday life and dream. Surprising spectacle where imagination becomes real. An array of subjects catering from infants to adolescents. For our story to reach all corners of the world. K-animation makes healthy laughter for children. Completely new. But something anyone can relate with. Flawlessly made. And tears that go with it. K-drama. Korea is coming at you with another story to tell.
정신과 맞닿은 분들에게 드리는 광주 인권상이다 보니 수상까지 이어지는 과정이 참 어렵고 힘든 것 같아요.
Presiding over Monday's cabinet meeting following his latest diplomatic agenda in New York, President South Korea's economy will grow. The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged.
Mission complete for rocket booty South Korea.
Seoul is rallying in hopes of bringing the World Expo 2030.
Arirang.
The Seoul High Court has rejected the medical community's efforts to block the government's plan to drastically boost medical school admissions. The ruling gave the government a major boost to push through the plan, paving the way for Korea's first medical student quota hike in 27 years. The presidential office said that this has, quote unquote, concluded the spiraling controversy over the issue, urging striking doctors to return to hospitals. But they're showing no intention of heading back. The head of the Korea Medical Association even called the court's decision as the final death sentence that will ruin Korea's medical system. What's next for the medical student quota hike? For some clues, we have Song Se-ryun, professor of law at Kyunghee University, joining us. It's always a great pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure. Happy to join you.
We also have Dr. Alice Tan, an internist at Ms. Medi Women's Hospital, with us tonight. It's always great to see you.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, let's kick things off with you, Professor Song. Let's first look into the details of this ruling. Could you explain for us the key points made by the court upon its delivery of the ruling?
Right. In this battle, doctors and students and various doctors groups filed an injunction lawsuit trying to block the implementation of the quota increase. But most of the suits were either dismissed or rejected, largely due to a standing ground. Standing means that only those people who are directly impacted by this action can sue. So if it's a quota issue, then the proper party to have a standing would be the medical school or the students. But the doctors groups, those parties that initiate this lawsuit, they are all knocked down. So there is a first hurdle of the standing, but the second hurdle, when it gets to the substantive part of it, in this stage, because it is a temporary injunction, we're trying to stop right away, the court is saying, well, we don't see clear reason to stop the proceeding of the government at this point. What can they do? They can go for a substantive, a second one, so to speak, go for not a temporary injunction, but the permanent injunction of the government actions. So those people who survive the standing program is preparing for that. But I got to say that this battle happening in the legal courtroom is not the proper ground. Because the courts would say that this is a policy issue, political issue, not exactly the legal issue. They look at the legal part of it, which is a small section of the whole question. So they'll look at the procedure or the process of it. But in terms of whether this policy is a good one or not, they're not the party. So they're not the proper authority to do it. So they'll exercise what is called a judicial restraint and defer the decisions mostly to the government. So I think the odds are stacked against the doctors. But from the get-go, the proper ground was not the courtroom, but in the political realm and the political and the policy negotiations and the collaborations that should have taken place, or which is sorely lacking in this case.
Nonetheless, Dr. Tan, many say that the ruling has posed a major setback to doctors' concerted efforts to stop the medical student hike, but striking trainee doctors are not backing down. They say they have no intention of returning to hospitals, while medical professors are looking to expand their weekly breaks and initiate a one-week suspension of medical services in protest as well. Tell us more about how doctors are responding to the ruling.
So first of all, there seems to be greater unity among the different doctor groups and members of the medical community. So there was a joint press conference of the Korean Society of Medical Education, the Korean Board of Medical Specialties, and the KMA, in which they really dissected the evidence that was presented to the court and showed very clearly that the deliberation process for coming up with this number of 2,000 for increasing the medical school quota was very, the basis was very weak. The evidence is very scant. And so that has been established, I think, just looking at the data as they were presented. And so now we are seeing greater unity among physician groups. As you said, medical students have not returned to the classrooms. Doctors in training have not budged. They have not returned to hospitals to work. And then, of course, the attending physicians at university-level hospitals, they're really tired. They're fatigued because of all of the extra work that they're having to do. And so they are overhauling their work schedule so that they can balance patient safety with clinical care, their research responsibilities, and their own well-being. In terms of a larger strike, as of this afternoon, I understand that has not been on the table. This is from the chairman of the KMA, that's not on the table yet, a general strike of 140,000 doctors around the country. But it is, we hope that we don't have to get to that stage. And as Professor Kim said, there is a solution. There's a very clear solution to this problem, and that is dialogue that is transparent, debate that is data-driven, and discussion that includes all of the key stakeholders so that we can come up with a policy that protects the health of the Korean people. That is our common goal, and we should act as partners in achieving this goal, not in a confrontational manner.
Doctors are making strong remarks about the ruling. The Korean Medical Student Association said the ruling clearly showed that Korea's legal principles have been collapsed by what they called the dictatorial government, while the KMA called the decision a death sentence, as I mentioned at the top, to Korea's medical system. It looks like the court's decision had little or no impact on them. Now, meanwhile, Professor Song, the presidential office has called on medical schools to expedite procedures to finalize enrollment expansion so it can be reflected from next year. What are the remaining legal procedures?
Well, as the policy stands, the last hurdle at this point is the universities have to amend their academic regulations to reflect the increase to quota, because without that, they cannot go ahead with it. So that would be something that the government is urging. Out of about 30 medical schools, there are some schools that have not gone through that. And they're looking to the Supreme Court and waiting for the final decision of this temporary loss injunction and also the permanent injunctions. So I think that there will be a little bit of delays because of those schools, but on the whole, the schedule going through.
And while the government pushed to finalize medical schools quota expansion, Doctors Association appealed to the Supreme Court. As you mentioned, attorney Lee Byung-chul, representing doctors' side, expects the top court's decision to come as early as this month. What's the expected trajectory from here, and what are some possible variables going forward?
Again, going back to the whole thing about whether the courtroom is a proper venue to decide this thing. I think that I'm a little bit pessimistic about the substantive part of the lawsuit as well, because of the reasons that I talked about. Because this is a policy decisions, and the courts looking at this will only look at the procedural part of it and the process of it. It's the same thing as the court will not make a decision based on their business judgment when you're looking at the corporate cases. Likewise, they will not look at this as if they were taking over the government's role to decide what the policy is. So they'll confine themselves to the procedural and process part of it. So for that reason, even if the whole process has been bungled and not very well managed, the courts will look at it and say, well, let's see whether the modicum of the procedural legitimacy is there. And they find it, and they'll say that, well, they can be resolved. So I think that, as Dr. Tan said, this has to go back to the proper value, which is the political value. And I know that the doctors have been very resilient and very reluctant to change in the past. And there were attempts to increase the doctors' numbers and quotas, and it has not been successful. But maybe this is the time to just, take those things into consideration and sit down together and really go forward, looking at what kind of challenges, medical and social, that we're facing. I think that the key stakeholders has to be participating in this, and that process has been so limited.
And Dr. Tan, as the government-doctor standoff deepens, medical void is growing in hospitals. And as part of efforts to fill that void, the government has allowed foreign doctors to practice medicine at hospitals. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo assured the public that the government will take steps to ensure that only qualified foreign doctors can practice in Korea. What's your take on this?
I have a special perspective on this issue because I went to medical school here in Korea, but I did my residency training in the United States. And in order to go to the United States to do my training, I had to take United States medical licensing examination, which consists of a series of 3 tests, basic science, and clinical skills assessment as well. Non-U.S. citizens have to take a English language proficiency test. Our credentials need to be reviewed by the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. It's a very involved process. Likewise, here in Korea, for foreign medical graduates, they have to take the Korean medical licensing examination, and they have to pass, like every other doctor, to practice medicine here in South Korea. It is shocking to hear a government official say that we would be breaking our well-established practices and laws regarding the practice of medicine in South Korea, which are in line with international standards and practices for medical licensing throughout the world. And to say that this would be done without establishing really clear criteria, what kind of testing would be done, it's very disappointing, and it's shocking. And I think Koreans should be shocked to hear something like this from a government official. They should be doing everything they can to protect the health of our people, including making sure that our doctors are well qualified, trained, and ready to practice medicine in our country.
Now, here's another point of discussion that's grabbing spotlight, Dr. Tan. The government is looking to establish a defense medical school where long-term service military doctors will be trained. Some 200 military doctors have been dispatched to fill medical void since Doctors Walkout began, and it seems that the move is part of government efforts to enhance public health care services in national emergencies. What are your thoughts on this?
I think the concept of a defense medical school is just fine. There's nothing wrong with that as a concept. But I would like to remind the public of what happened in the recent past when the government decided to increase the number of doctors in the public health sphere by establishing a medical college at Seonam University. This was established in 1991, specifically to try to increase the number of medical school graduates in the public health sphere. And because of substandard education and continuous poor standing and performance in terms of trying to reach accreditation standards, the medical school had to close. And it was a huge fiasco. It was chaotic. There was financial loss. Medical school students, they felt like their futures were taken away from them. And so the decision to establish a medical college should not be made spontaneously or as a reactionary measure. It needs to be well thought out, and a long-term plan needs to be put in place. It shouldn't just be floated in this scenario to try to ease maybe the anxieties of the public. That's not the way to go about, because we have precedents of what happens when the government tries to approach it in this manner. It fails.
So you have your concerns about this, and what the government needs is a more long-term perspective, a long-term review on the matter, especially judging from the past. Now, moving on to what seems to be another big legal issue dividing the government and doctors. Professor Song, the government issued an ultimatum today that under the relevant law, junior doctors must return to their work sites within 3 months of departure to qualify for next year's fellowship exam. Today marks exactly 3 months since trainee doctors launched a nationwide strike, so this means the majority of striking doctors have until midnight to return to hospitals, but doctors argue otherwise. What's the accurate interpretation of related laws?
Well, there's a controversy. The rule says that in order to take the exam, we're talking about the residents, they have to go through the training from March to February, so 1 year period. But if for some reason they don't fulfill that period, they have another chance the next year for a 3 months period to make up for it. So that 3 months make-up period is the maximum that's allowable. That's what government is saying. Of course, there are exceptions. If you get sick, if there are some emergencies, they take off those periods. So the battle at this point is that government is looking at it very narrowly, and the residents are looking at it as very expansively and very permissively. So that's why there is a discrepancy. I think that the government, I think, has an upper hand because of they play the regulating role. And again, this is a kind of situation where the training doctors or the residents will probably be disadvantaged if they don't take the exam, if they don't come back. But ultimately, the ultimate loser could be the government, because the government is causing a very, very big public health crisis without solving it for months after months.
Well, concerns are rising that in worst case scenario, Korea will have nearly 3,000 less specialists next year because of this, which could significantly impact the country's medical services. It looks like a dialogue, as Dr. Tan has mentioned, is needed now more than ever between the government and doctors, which is why the government repeated its calls on doctors to engage in dialogue, saying it's ready to talk at any time with no restrictions on the form or agenda. But Dr. Tan, it looks like doctors won't respond to the government's calls for dialogue. What more efforts are needed at this stage to strike up a conversation between the two sides and ultimately to find a breakthrough to end the prolonged medical deadlock?
I think we really need to focus on what the true threats to healthcare are in South Korea. We don't need to create conflict. We have enough problems and challenges to deal with as it stands. For example, the Korean national health insurance system may become bankrupt in the near future. We are behind in trying to adapt to a low birth rate and reverse pyramid demographic social structure. We need to work together, the government and healthcare professionals, in trying to find healthcare reform that everyone can live with. The key stakeholders need to be involved and represented in these discussions, the discussions need to be transparent. And I should note, in 2024, for residency positions, there was actually a surplus of doctors relative to the number of residency positions. In other words, even though there were 222 doctors who could not get residency positions of their choice, there were still positions in the field of obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, family medicine that went completely unfilled. There are many university programs that have no residents in these fields. And so we need to examine why. Why is this trend occurring? And that's what we need to focus on, and that's what we need to try to fix. I think we're really wasting a lot of time. We're wasting a lot of resources, and animosity is only growing, and that's not the way to solve this problem. We need to come together in dialogue. And I would stress that doctors have asked for being at the table from the beginning. In other words, starting from scratch, going back to the drawing board to come up with a policy that truly works, and having the true experts in medical education, healthcare administration, doctors who are clinicians on the front line. We know what our patients need. We know what the public needs in terms of healthcare, and we would like to have our voices heard from the beginning when the discussions are just being started in terms of what to do with healthcare reform. We don't want someone to try to force policies down our throat that we are afraid will ultimately harm the Korean people and also lead to substandard education, which has happened in the past when measures were taken that were too hastily put together.
Well, unfortunately, no immediate breakthrough is in sight unless major concessions are made by either side. But we'll be sure to watch closely how things develop from this point on. Thank you so much, Dr. Tan and Professor Song, as always, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.
What can I say? This place is amazing. Let's do it.
Oh my God, what an investment people did at this place, because it's like a huge place. New thoughts, new emotions to come in. A place to I felt like I was able to flush out my tension in my body, my stress or whatever.
Cool.